This is the Weigh-In Podcast by Ben Watt Chestnut and the occasional pop-in Sebastian Romero. On this week's Weigh-In, you already know what we're going to talk about. Anthony Joshua knocks out Jake Paul. And we're going to break down that. And we'll also bring up that Anderson Silva, Tyrone Woodley as well. But nonetheless, first and foremost, Wayne got it wrong. They thought Jake was going to bring a stronger fight, but he didn't. And Anthony Joshua went in there and did exactly what everybody else thought he was going to do. So that is just the first and foremost. But nonetheless, crazy one. Crazy one. But nonetheless, that is this week's weigh-in. So if we jump right into this one, first and foremost, who would have ever thought that it was going to go that way? Yes. So the first key takeaway we saw here is, okay, the weight difference is, and this is what we feel presumptuously might have gone towards why Jake Paul was a little tired. So the agreement and the exhibition, Davis agreed to a 195-pound maximum catch weight. So we're talking 195. And that is interesting. And that 195, so you prepare for a lighter opponent. And then now you talk, what was that maximum? So a 245-pound maximum. 245-pound limit. So you look at Joshua weighed in about 243.4 pounds, while Paul weighed in 216.6. So we're already talking about big gains here. And we're talking about big gains here because, first of all, they prepared for a lighter opponent that was going to have to be heavier. So I don't think their issue was the distance, because they figured the opponent is going to be heavier, going to get tired, whatever the case may be. But the reason here is Paul prepared for a lighter opponent, then turned around and scheduled Anthony Joshua in a little over a month. And I think you cannot prepare for a lighter guy and then turn around and schedule a heavyweight fight and be like, okay, now I'm preparing for a new guy. I think that's on Paul's team right there. His team of guys, that they should know better than that to schedule something like that. That you should schedule a full training camp. You should say, okay, we're going to get Joshua this, that. And I understand that they were going to be able to get Joshua fight in a full length, because obviously it was a short notice and type of thing. But at the same time here, what happened should not have happened. If everybody understands me, what happened should not have happened. Paul's team should have known better than that. And even then, the way Jake Paul went about most things, first and foremost, it looked like the strategy was a box in, box out. And for a lot of the people that don't understand that, that's, you step in, you throw a couple punches, you jab in, you do a little combination, and you step out. Jake Paul was doing very well of the moving and staying out, but he wasn't boxing in. And that's what I think made the difference. I didn't see a lot of clear combinations of Jake Paul. I didn't see, I said this before, this is going to test into what kind of Paul we're going to get. And we got a Paul that just really stayed away the whole time. And I don't understand why or what that was, but and his trainers were saying, "Hey, you gotta move." They were saying a lot of good things, but like we learned from Frank Martin, Tank Davis, you cannot stand still in a fight. You stand still and take punches, you're gonna get beat. Anthony Joshua, we all know he's got some step behind him. As we like to say, a little bit of power behind there. And I don't think that the way the strategy Paul had, and I don't say the team, because the team looked like they was trying to give him the best strategy. Jake Paul's run around, and it was like first round, second round, he's slipping around, referee Chris had to say, hey, y'all got to stop this. That's not what the people are paying to see. People are paid to see better than this. And he got stopped because, first and foremost, I don't think his conditioning was not where it needed to be. And that's because he was not properly boxing in, boxing out. He was just move. And you got to get in there and put some combinations on. You got to exchange the blows. You got to stay in there. This did not look like a typical Jake we see. This did not look like a typical boxing Jake. This looked like, a different Jake. And I don't know why they brought this version to the ring, but you got to box through these fights. You got to box them through. When you box them through, you give yourself a chance through and through. And I think he didn't really box him through. And I think that was very clear testament to what did or didn't go on. I think it's fairly simple that as for team Paul. So, for many that might not have seen the fight, Jake Paul got knocked out and broke his jaw. And that happened because he was standing still, and Anthony Joshua unleashed a fury of punches, and it went straight through. And when you see that, the straight through, and it was as clear cut as possible, straight through. Like it was just, just no real way to say about that. And it came straight through, and he was able to finish Paul. Now, a lot of people thought it was going to be earlier, and I think that was because they didn't see Jake taking this serious. And I will say I kind of felt that too, that it didn't seem like normal Jake Paul getting in there. It didn't seem like the antics came late when he was tired. It just kind of I really think that this fight woke up Paul to really what's true here. And I think that because he stepped in a ring and really didn't understand what he was getting into. And I think that's just very simple. Anthony Joshua is very good, and you got to have a better game plan than let me run and keep acting like I slipped. Because here's the truth. Chris, the referee did the right thing by finally saying, all right, Paul, nope, you didn't slip. I'm counting that as a knockdown because this is enough. I truly think it's true because the referee was trying to keep the official was trying to keep the fight was trying to keep the fight going. He was trying to be like, come on, man, the fans ain't paid to see this, as they like to call in boxing, the third man in the ring was like, this is not what they paid to see. This is not what they paid to see. He was trying to get like, hey, the fans have paid to see y'all box. Let's box here. Don't keep falling down. Don't keep left and right. Don't keep not doing what you're supposed to. The fans paid to see you box. Let's see some boxing here. And I kind of think it was Paul that just from the get-go was just not. He was tired in himself. I think I don't say it has anything to do with, I know they talk about he's got the mental guy that's on the team that does the breathing exercises. I don't think that was the case. I think he just solely focused. He came in there and was like, okay, let me stay away from Joshua, but you got to box in. Like you got to actually jab. You got to, and Paul had to punch up, and that plays a difference, but I think there could have been a better strategy. And was I disappointed in the performance we got from Jake Paul? Yes, that was not a typical Jake performance. I get you're fighting a guy that's more than amazing. Has got the pack to punch, but that's no excuse for Jake to have gone in there all tired, not ready, running the ring, almost not even really, really able to keep his game and not staying, light with it, like clearly moving, quick moving, not kind of nice and easy, testing it out. And Joshua basically let him tire himself out and was like, once you're tired, you're not going to move like that no more. And then there's going to be a problem. You're going to turn around and you're going to lose. There's not going to be a problem in terms of this fight. You're going to lose, and then it's going to just be like that. And Joshua did in all pretenses and all tenses, he did the right thing. Like, you sit there, you see the guys running the ring, and you're like, all right, I'm not going to get frustrated. I'm just going to, keep letting him do it. When he gets tired, now I'm going to unleash, be able to get it done right. And I think in terms of Jake, in terms of Tyron Woodley, I know we said we're going to talk about that, Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva. The fact that Anderson Silva now is becoming a cop is fairly interesting. And the second half, Tyron Woodley just don't got it going. What is going on with his boxing, man? He just can't. First and foremost, it looked like during the Tyron Woodley, that with his knockdown, it basically, just to give you the jump, it looked like the corner was gonna stop it, and the referee stepped in and stopped it. So it looked very like the corner might have stopped, it was gonna stop it, and then the referee decided to stop it. So it really looked like something was going on there between the referee and Woodley's corner. They might have been getting ready to grab the white towel, because all of a sudden he stands up. He says, "I'm good." He says, walk this way," but he's facing the corner, and he just, next thing you know, he said, "Yep, yeah, it's done here." And he's like, "Whoa," But he did get hit hard. Anderson Silva doing good. I like the fact of more than most that Anderson Silva is still getting in the ring. He's doing great things. But I just kind of think here, like, that didn't disappoint. And I kind of felt like the undercards of that were better than the main event. I didn't really feel the main event was what it lived up to be, because I felt like Jake was very, he didn't even want to, it looked like he didn't even want to box. He just kept running. We don't even see light jabs. We don't even see, and it just, you don't see it. You didn't see it, with all that going on. You just can't, the way Jake was running the ring, it just didn't really feel like that was a typical Jake that we supposed to get. It just kind of felt like, all right, Jake, what are you doing here, Jake? What's going on, Jake? It didn't really feel like the Paul we were looking for out of this fight. It just looked like Jake was in there and was like, I'm gonna try to survive these rounds and get it to the distance. But even if it had gone the distance, I don't think, the way my scorecards were going, Jake would not have won the fight on my scorecard. And that's because he wasn't really doing much. And I saw a lot of movement in boxing from Joshua that I thought was working on really well. So I don't really think Jake would have won on my scorecard, but also at the same time, it is what it is. And that's because, when you come into the ring, you cannot, you can't go in there. You can't go in there doing what Jake was doing. You come into a ring, you got to box. You got to come into box. Don't come into the ring barely trying to box and barely trying to do anything and just like running. Don't even really want to stand up. You're going to tire yourself out. Then that's what happened with Jake. He tired himself out, and that's on him. That is really on him. And that's on him because of the things he was doing. I just can't say this enough, that you can't go into a fight like that and not even really box, man. You can't go in there and try to do the Floyd Money Mayweather and don't do it correctly. Mayweather was good at that because he was able to box his fights, the fact that Jake went in there and was like running, 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 it's not about moving left and right, back and forth, back and forth. Like, this isn't keep away. This is, you got to move a little bit, make sure you're not exhausting all of yourself in this. And as for Jake, he exhausted himself. And this is, and this is real odd. And I say this is odd because we have not seen this before Jake before. We've seen Jake go the distance with Tommy Fury and not be this exhausted. Now you get in with Anthony Joshua and you're completely exhausted, which is just he. I think in terms of this, there was not the right prep. There was not the right prep at all. I don't think there was the right prep by Paul, and that's unbelievable. That we as fans expect better from Jake Paul to come out and have a fight like that. We expect better. We expect better from Jake. We expect better. We expect better. I would have never expected Jake to step in a ring and then go like that. Never. Never. Never would I have ever expected that. And the way Jake went about that, you just, you hate to see it. You got to get in there and box, bring the fans what they want. Not that mockery we got now. So in the ring, they were asking Jake about what's next for him, and he wasn't really answering it. So I will say this. I think of the statute of an opponent, no more heavyweight fights, man. Stay out of that heavyweight, go back to cruiserweight. Let's get a cruiserweight going. Let's build off this Joshua loss and knockout. I don't think I think there's a moving forward. I think in terms of Paul, I do think continue boxing. I think don't throw your towel in yet because you lost to Joshua. Joshua's a great opponent, very skillful. The lack of issue here was the conditioning. The conditioning was not where it needed to be. Paul was way too tired to keep moving around for that. And why does that happen? That happens because of what Jake was doing. You cannot do stuff like that. You can't expect to run around. And it's just, it's just very, very upsetting to see that. In all pretenses and all real tenses, it's just it's upsetting because you never expect it to happen. You never expect to be going in through any situation like that and have to really look at something and say, all right, this is what happened, or this is what is going to, or this is what has happened. Any situation, you don't want to go into that and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. When I looked at the way Paul was boxing, it wasn't no longer this is what's going to happen. It was as soon as he gets tired and Joshua catch him, he's down, he's done. And I think that's because he was not properly. They put themselves there by not properly working on the conditioning, by skipping the conditioning, which I would have very well not. I would have never done that. They should have never skipped the conditioning. You can't skip conditioning. It is the most important part of everything that gets done. You cannot. And obviously that's what that Paul camp in corner did, because if they hadn't of, that wouldn't have happened. It just really wouldn't have happened. And I think that in terms of that, it would have never came down to what it did. And I think it should have never got there. Paul's camp and corner should have done better. They really should have done better. And I say that they should have done better because that is the way, you should go on about certain things and things that are bigger and better in most situations. But the Paul camp did not do as they should, and that's really just a sad sight to see for Jake. I expected to see a good Jake Paul, a great Jake Paul coming in through and through. I expected to see a boxing Jake Paul. I expected to see Jake really get in there and do some of the things we like to see out of Jake. I expected it to be really good. I expected Paul to kind of, work himself out, work himself over in terms of the situation and all of that. But what we saw versus what we wanted was two different things. You know, what we wanted was Jake to kind of get in there, really, really stand toe to toe with Joshua, possibly might get stopped in the last two rounds and be like, I tried. Not this running Jake. No, I don't think this was the Jake we was looking to see. I don't think in any pretense this is the Jake we wanted to see. I think Jake could have done a lot better in terms of that. I think in terms of the training camp and the trainers, they should have very well said to themselves, "We need to do better. We need to do better on all fronts." We should not see Jake in a situation like this where you can see he's visibly gassed, and at this point, Joshua going to knock him out at any point. And in terms of a corner, you see that Jake's done. Obviously, I get that they did not want to throw the towel in, but the preparation wasn't there. The fight was taken. It was the wrong opponent for that short amount of time. And that's why Joshua did what he did. They were showing on if you saw the Netflix and on the film, he was saying when he got the call, he's like, absolutely, I want that fight. Absolutely. Because he knew Paul was not going to be ready for that. I, I, I really think Jake could have done better. I would like to see better from Jake. I think moving forward, they got to work on that conditioning. That should not have happened. He has gone 12 rounds before. There's no excuse. Jake tired himself out from the antics, and it caught up with him this time. And I think I think you got to do better. You can't put up all those antics in terms of that, and then be like, hey, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. It's not really it's not really something that you should or shouldn't do in terms of it. And I say that because you got to do better. You have to do better. I think Jake has to do better. In terms of it, Jake has to do a lot better, and it's just real different. And I say that because Jake, he does. You know, the fact that I feel like we got better boxing from the undercards than we did the main event, that shouldn't happen. You're the headliner. It should be the exact opposite, you know? And I don't know. In terms of it, I kind of felt like we didn't, I mean, we got all it was chalked up to be. I feel like we got what it was all chalked up to be, you know? But I just kind of feel like we didn't quite get what we should have. No, I say that because we should have. Jake should have acted better, done better. Jake should have done better, and he really didn't. I don't know how else to kind of get you there. That Jake should have done better, and it just wasn't. I kind of felt like it wasn't. That wasn't the Jake we were supposed to see. I think Anthony Joshua did all the right things, and I think in terms of Anthony Joshua, he didn't even get hurt. He didn't even get cut up. He made easy money that night. I'm not saying, I wasn't saying before the fight it was going to be easy money, but he turned it into easy money by the way he went through that opponent. by the way he went through Jake so quickly. You know, you hate to see it, although there were so many people that wanted to see Jake get knocked out. That's literally what fueled that fight for why everybody's all about, oh, Jake's gonna get knocked out. Jake gonna get knocked out. Well, he did. He did get knocked out, but I also wanted to believe that Jake Paul could hold his own a little better. But the minute that first bell rang in the first round and he was moving the way he was, I was like, Jake gonna get knocked. I knew right away. I'm like, he's gonna get knocked out. You're moving too fast, too quick, too evasive. Get in there, stand up, take a few. You know, he couldn't take nothing. And I think this is the fact of the matter was, hey, the conditioning was an issue. And as a camp, that should have never happened for that to have been the issue. I think in terms of it, they should have been better all the way around in terms of it. And I just can't believe the camp did that. So I think it's a tough situation, no matter how you look at it from a Jake Paul standpoint, that, Jake should have done better. Obviously things happen. This is a sport, it's boxing, but they should have done better as a camp. They should have done better as so many all fronts. Things should have been better. And I think in terms of that, I think the Jake Paul camp did not do well. They did not serve him well. I know other people will think it did, and Anthony Joshua is a tough opponent, but the fact that you're tired tells you that's the same thing that happened with Conor McGregor and Floyd Money Mayweather. McGregor was tired. The camp did not work on the endurance, because they said, oh, we're going to catch Floyd in the first 4 or 5 rounds and he's done, but they didn't catch Mayweather in the first 4 or 5 rounds. And obviously it went differently. You can't expect that you're going to knock somebody out in the first 4 or 5 rounds and say, we don't need to do conditioning. He's going to knock out easy. It doesn't work that way, because when you don't knock him out easy and you go the distance, now you get knocked out. We talked about this, that you just got to set yourself up for success in the right ways. And we talk about that there was no setup for success for Team Paul here. They did not set up Jake for success. The fact that Jake was tired in this fight should have never happened. And I say that with the utmost greatest respect to Team Paul and to all the trainers that were there. But you didn't serve Jake properly. You really didn't. Many can disagree or agree with me on that, but my opinion is the way it is. Jake was not served properly in this training camp, and that's on them, But nonetheless, with that being said, we are in the end of this episode. This episode, as you all know, this is yet another epi. We're continuing. And, for all of you that I've been getting this question, will we still be posting on Christmas? Yes, we will. Yes, we will still be getting an episode out on our Thursday Christmas. We will still be getting an episode out there. So nothing has changed. The pod is still going to be posting the way it should and as it will. So with that being said, this is just like, comment, subscribe, and share. So to let you know how close we are to our goal, we want to make 2K views in 2025 by the end of the year. We are right now at 1,804 views in 2025, which means we are about little under 200 off from being at our goal, which, and we are exactly 196 off. But we're almost there. Y'all got to share it. Let's tell a friend to tell a friend. We got to get them views up. We've been doing really good. We need a spike. We need about 196 views. Let's see if we can get it before the end of the year. If not, still really proud of where this channel is coming, for all the fans that reach out and the questions and everything everybody does. Very excited in the way this has gone. But nonetheless, that is this week's weigh-in. This is the weigh-in by Ben Chestnut and the occasional pop-in Sebastian Romero. And that is all I have for you on this one. I hope you guys have a good holiday season, but still got one more epi this week. The goal continues. Weigh in.